this webinar, because for people who are not able to attend this webinar, they can watch it afterwards, or if you just want to rewatch some parts, but it's also totally fine, you can always rewatch it. So welcome by the first webinar of our second round of our project Women for Renewable, W4RES. And in this project, we are aiming for gender equality and women empowerment in the renewable heating and cooling sector. And today we have chosen a very, in our opinion, critical topic that we think no one could have missed, because in such a crisis, it's really important to pay attention to it. And we think it's also very important to pinpoint groups that might face this crisis in an even more intensified way. So really happy to see so many of you joining in this subject. But before we go into, before I go into too much detail already right now, I would like to start with a small warm up, because yeah, it's Wednesday morning. I don't know if everyone had their coffee yet, or the tea or the juice, but we have some moves to get this webinar started. So if you're comfortable with it, please turn on your camera, or if you're not comfortable, you can leave it out. But I have a question for you. First question is, we are interested if you took part in the first round of webinars. If you took part, you can do a samba move, and if you did not took part, you can do like a kind of disco move, so we can get a bit of a feeling who has followed us or who is new. And nice, I see some people who are new and some people who are already joined, really nice. Great, great. And then the second question I would like you to ask, hi, I see also some new cameras. And the second question is more related to our topic of today. So did you, because we are focusing today on the rising prices of energy and how that affects people in energy poverty, but did you find a way to face at your household level or at your level to face the rising prices of energy? So if you have found a way to cope with it, use the samba move again, and if you don't, please use the disco move again. Nice, I see a lot of samba moves, really nice. Great. Okay, so that was the two questions I wanted to ask you, and I hope you're a bit warmed up to start this webinar with a bit more energy. So I'm not the only one speaking today. I am joined with two more speakers today. First is Katarina, and she's a board member at WCF, and her professional expertise is decentralized citizen energy project, local energy markets, energy efficiency, and she's advocating for socially sound and gender-just energy solutions. And she has a diploma in mathematics and a master's degree in education and psychology, and an MBA in sustainable management with a focus on renewable energy. So that's Katarina. I don't know.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Hi.
Great. And then we have Louise Sunderland joining us, and she's a senior advisor for the Regulatory Assistance Project, also REP, working on the demand side, energy policies and energy justice. And she has worked on energy efficiency and sustainability in the energy and building sector for already 15 years. And Louise is also an external expert for the European Commission, has served as an expert witness providing evidence to the United Kingdom House of Lords, and until recently was the director of a local citizens energy cooperative. And before moving into the energy field, she spent her early career working in international development and community development. So really happy to have her here. I don't know if she can turn on a camera. Yes.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Great. So, and I'm Simone. I'm also working at WCF, and I'm here an assistant in this project, and I'm really happy to be speaking today as well. So without further ado, and to prolong this time, let's get into this topic, and I would like to give the floor to Louise. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I will try and share my screen and present to you some work that I've been thinking about for a long time, but have only actually recently published. This is some work, as you'll see here. The title is Taking the Burnout, and I realized having written this title that doesn't necessarily translate very well, but it's basically, the title is trying to convey taking both the burning of fossil fuels out of heating, but also taking the pain of the high energy prices that we're seeing now, fossil heating for low-income households. Sorry, I'm slightly struggling with the technology. So the paper is here. This is a very short presentation, and I would recommend that you kind of go and have a look at the paper, because there's a lot that I'm not covering. What we really aim to do is to look at what is happening now, how affordable are renewable heating technologies for low-income households now, and then look at what are some of the things that people are doing around Europe to try and address this affordability, to try and make them more affordable. Our focus was low-income households, but of course we do know that within the low-income and particularly energy-poor groups, we see a disproportionate representation of female-headed households. So we see, of course, a lot of single-parent female-headed households and a lot of single retiree female households in these groups. So a lot of very big considerations around some of the recommendations and some of the strategies to improve affordability. You know, we do need some of this gender overlay and consideration. So I'm not going to spend too much on the time on the need, but just to say that really this decade, the decade we're already in and already kind of moving through quite quickly now to 2030, is absolutely vital for cutting fossil fuels in heating. The real figure that struck me was that in the impact assessment for reaching the EU climate target in 2030, it's not a target, but it's an indicative indication of effort, would see 1 in 4 homes replacing their heating system. So this is just really showing you before 2030 how much work there is to be done. We see countries responding already with strong policies, phasing out the replacement of your fossil fuel heating system. That's the map there, and then on the bottom, and then the map on the right is countries phasing out the use of subsidies for fossil fuels. So strong policies acting already this decade. So then what we wanted to do, of course, is to look at, well, if you're in a country with a phase out policy, which means maybe when your boiler next breaks, you won't be able to replace it with another gas boiler. What's the economics of shifting to a clean heating system? And I should say we focused on heat pumps. We focused on heat pumps for a very good reason, because actually we're benefiting now from a lot of information, a lot of studies telling us what the future most affordable or most cost-effective, not necessarily affordable, but cost-effective clean heating solutions will be. And they are coming out universally saying heat pumps and clean district heating, clean, efficient district heating. So as the kind of only individual building option, we focused on heat pumps. And given the volatility of prices at the moment, we felt that we couldn't do our economic analysis just based on one price period, one price point, but we did it on 2. So we looked first at pre-crisis prices. And the way that we did it's a very simple economic analysis, just looking at what's called the total cost of ownership. So looking at, if you roll in together the upfront investment costs and then the cost of running that technology over the lifetime of that heating system, then you get the kind of total cost of ownership of that technology. And we looked at a number of countries that are very fossil fuel reliant for their heating, and we looked at countries that have a very dominant fossil fuel type in their heating. So the majority of them gas, some countries also using oil or even coal. And you can see here the story is, so pre-crisis prices in 2021, the story is pretty much the same for all countries, in that the heat pump was always more costly. We did our analysis based on the average household energy use, but you'll see here we did make an adjustment when that's in the hatched box. We know obviously that lower income households don't use as much energy as they really should for heat. So they're not heating, they are underheating their homes. And so this hatched element here indicates that actually there could be up to around 20% or more than 20% now under the current prices, but 20% is the data that we found underheating in homes. So this is obviously something we really need to consider. And in our aim to decarbonize heating, we would obviously also want full heating services to be provided. So that's pre-price crisis. You know, the economics did not stack up. On prices more like that we're seeing today, and the price point we took was summer last year, but I think despite the fact that wholesale gas prices has gone down quite significantly since then, in our bills, we're still seeing the same prices right now. You can see, just looking at Germany example here, the economics has changed. And actually the bars, the one on the left now is shorter than the one on the right, which means that energy prices have shifted significantly enough in relationship between gas and electricity that the heat pump looks like the more economical answer. So if you've got some money in the bank, if you can afford to purchase a heat pump and you're worried about future price volatility based on this prices today, you know, you might be seriously considering putting in the heat pump. But economics getting better doesn't mean affordability gets better. Of course, this is a really obvious point, right? When the prices of everything goes up, the affordability goes down. And this comparison here, we're looking at the heat pump, obviously, as certainly in Germany, the example on the top left, as the most cost-effective option under these prices. But of course, we need to compare that to the point at which people are already struggling to pay their bills in 2021. And so these green arrows here are just trying to illustrate the kind of affordability gap that we still really need to fill. And of course, as prices change, this affordability gap shrinks or increases. So that's the task we gave ourselves, is looking for strategies to reduce that affordability gap. And of course, there are sort of two main approaches. One is to reduce the upfront costs of the investment. And of course, heat pumps can be anywhere between around 50% to 3 or 4 times more expensive than, for example, a gas boiler. And then also addressing this running cost difference, as you see here. And so just to quickly skip through, and it will be a real skip through some of these strategies that we found. Perhaps the most simple one that we found was simply subsidizing the upfront costs. And then we came into a few more, perhaps more complex approaches to addressing the running costs, which I think actually is probably the bigger challenge. So very quickly then on subsidizing the upfront costs, we did a survey. We actually built on a survey by the OCO Institute, looking across all of the clean heat subsidies available in the member states. They'd found 25 out of 27 countries did have a clean heat subsidy. What we did was do an overlay assessment of actually, but are lower income households going to be accessing these? First, we looked at the level of subsidy. You know, is it enough money? And we found actually only 9 of the 25 had subsidies that were more than 70% of the cost, or that were differentiated by income bracket, as in you get higher subsidies for a lower income bracket. But then when we looked at the other barriers, maybe non-cost barriers, but, you know, barriers around access to the funding, dedicated funding, so that kind of higher income neighbours are not going to get in there first and exhaust all the budget. We actually only found one country in which the program, the subsidy program, addressed all of those barriers, and that was France. I would say, however, all of the stakeholders I spoke to in France did say that it is a very complex framework. So the money is there and it's designed relatively well, but it's very complex and it changes very frequently. So actually, you know, you can clearly see that there is administrative burden in trying to actually navigate your way through that program. So then getting onto the strategies for reducing running costs, and I must say, I think we found less than we would have hoped, but on the other hand, there were people out there trying to innovate and come up with some good solutions to try and reduce running costs sustainably long term. And as we know, energy efficiency is always been the most sort of sustainable long term strategy to reduce your running costs. Of course, it reduces your need for heat. The more efficient building you have, the less you're paying on your bills. It also reduces the size of your heat pump, so that's great for the investment costs. Really importantly, it enables better performance of the heat pump. The heat pump can perform using less electricity at more weather points in the year, so more extreme weather, and that's really, really important for shifting from a gas boiler, for example, to a heat pump. And energy efficiency, as we'll see as well, is the gateway to what I think is probably the biggest value we need to access in the energy system, which is the value of cheaper renewables when they are abundant and when demand is low. And of course, that requires us to be able to phase down or even phase off our heating at times of day when electricity is really expensive. And of course, if you've got a relatively efficient home, it holds heat and you can afford to turn down or turn off for those really, really expensive price peaks in the day. So energy efficiency, I won't dwell on too long there, but I think really important here to say is that as we are introducing these phase out policies or incentives to switch to clean heating, really important that the energy efficiency standards are considered alongside. Second, and this was something I was surprised to find, is actually examples of particularly social housing providers using perhaps more innovative technology mixes. And I think the big one we're seeing is the combination of an air source heat pump, rooftop solar and a battery. And there's a project in Scotland in the UK that they've just released a review of, and this combination actually has proved to be really successful, reducing the need to import and pay for electricity from the grid by up to 90% by one customer, massively reducing bills of imported energy. So huge benefits to the household. Obviously, massive upfront investment costs there. This is really shifting the burden from the running costs to the upfront investment costs. And I think there's some really interesting things here around as PV prices come down. And we know PV is a bit more of a plug-in and play, a bit easier technology in some ways to retrofit for homes. And in comparison to energy efficiency, which I think the barriers still remain. Now, we haven't really managed to successfully, I think, overcome a lot of the kind of more hassle-based, more technology-based barriers of deeply retrofitting homes. So I do wonder whether there'll be a focus now on these technologies that are maybe easier to install. The third one, as I've said, is the importance of flexibility, and there are huge benefits to be had from the energy system here. But there's a lot of work to be done to line up the value there and make sure that it's shown to households. But I think there are absolutely huge benefits. I think the challenge we've had so far, and I've been talking about trying to capture the value of cheap electricity at different times in the day for low-income households for a while, and I've always had pushback. And I think the reason we've had pushback is that we have generally used tariffs, so dynamic, flexible tariffs where electricity is priced at different times and different periods of the day to incentivize people to change their demand and reward them for it. These tariffs, however, are quite risky. They push some of the risk onto the householder. And of course, for households that are struggling with their energy bills, they're struggling about uncertainty of energy bills, actually taking on more risk is just not something that is terribly advisable or terribly desirable to them. So I think we need to move beyond tariffs and move into, and what I did find is that a couple of really interesting kind of services, aggregation, I think aggregation and services are the right term to try and enable households to not have to be kind of turning things off and manually managing, but actually a certain level of control given to an aggregator who speaks to the grid and then aggregates lots of household demand and provides a reward to those households through some level of automation. This is an area I think needs massive exploration. And the last strategy that we found is probably the most important, I think. There's a lot of complexity in all the things that I've just talked about, complex technologies combining energy efficiency, PV, batteries, heat pumps. And there's also a lot of technology in figuring out how we integrate with the grid, with our energy demand. And so I think a focus on services is really key. Services could be anything from, one-stop shop, that really holds your hands through all the process and provides some important aftercare through an aggregation service, what I focused on actually was heat as a service. And heat as a service is of course, where the service provider takes on the upfront cost of the technology. And then within a service contract where they are contracted to give you heat within the desired parameters, temperature, number of hours a day, those kinds of things, at a fixed cost. So a lot of that kind of complexity around, accessing the subsidies, deciding the technology mix, making sure the systems perform, which is so important, is taken on by the service provider. And what the householder gets is a very knowable bill. I think there's a lot of benefits that we can see here. And actually these benefits have been recognised. There are a number of small energy cooperatives, particularly one in Brighton and Hove, trying to use this heat as a service to deliver heat pump heating and energy efficiency improvements to low-income households. So it's a real canter through some of the solutions. Just to finish on a couple of reflections on how this affects women-led households, or some of the very clear gender considerations. First of all, technology switches are complex. We know that. We also know that very often the member of the household that's choosing the technologies, maybe programming the heating system, is quite often the one that's not there most of the day. And usually, we do see men being the technology choosers, and quite often women being the people who are there more times in the day, and therefore feeling the good or bad results. And so I think there are these really significant considerations there. As we move to clean heating, very often we are going to need to change the heating schedules. So going from a kind of blast heating, very hot in 2 time periods in the day that we might do with our fossil fuels, through to a kind of more low temperature but even heating through the day, and that needs behavioural change and changes and adjustments there. The potential to flex or change the time of our energy use is not equal across all household types, and some really, really interesting studies going on around the innate sort of potential of households. And I think interesting information coming out there about particularly female-led households that where the person at work is on shift working, and actually these are really, really important considerations if we are going to see the need to capture this value of flexibility. And then finally, there are these questions of control and independence, both within families. So someone else has control of the heating system, and you are receiving the impacts in your environment in the home as a result of that. But then between households and service providers as well, how much are we willing to give up control of switching things on and off in our homes and managing our homes to a service provider, and what level of trust do we need to have in those service providers? And there's some great work here that I've referenced as well from GeneWorks in the Netherlands. So I'm going to stop there. I'm sure I've spoken for too long already, but do get in touch if you would like to, and I'm really looking forward to the discussions in the workshop.
Great, thank you. It was really interesting to see, and to also see what kind of solutions you are proposing. So thank you. I think we are, I forgot to mention, I wanted to say, if there are any questions, please put them in the chat or wait till the end, and then we have some time reserved to answer all your questions. So please save them. And then we are going ahead with the next part, because we are seeing a lot of rising energy prices, and we want to talk about this in combination with energy poverty. However, energy poverty is not just coming to look around it. This was already always there. And in the beginning, I saw some new people and I saw some old people. So I would like you to ask, in the next slide, we have a Menti made, and a question, and I would like you to ask to go to menti.com. The link will also be coming in the chat, and enter the code, and then answer the question: what do you associate with energy poverty? What are the things that comes to your mind? So please take like 2 minutes to fill in this Menti. Let me know if it's not working, or put it in the chat if it's not working. or you also can scan the barcode on the slide. And then we will share the results in a minute. And maybe Marilise can share her screen for me. There it comes. Great, we already see some people putting in their thoughts about their association with energy poverty. Single mother, cold, yeah. Lack of money for heating. I see a lot of being cold. An unfair energy system, high costs. I see, yeah. It's moving sometimes. Exclusion. Poor get even more poor. Yeah. Lower income. Shortage of heat. Vulnerability. Vulnerable citizens. I see some really nice and good associations with energy poverty. So I like to see it. Development countries, also very interesting to see. Although I have to say it's not only development countries, of course, where we are looking at. We are also looking at the developed countries. So a help, that's also very nice one to associate with energy poverty. So I see some really nice and good, everything is good, of course, but I see some nice words that we can use to define our way, how we define energy poverty. So if we go back to the slides, then we go see how we define energy poverty. I think it's good to have an understanding. Well, there may be some people that already know, but we, the European Union, while the slides are coming back, I will just talk for a bit. But the European Union refers to energy poverty as a situation in which a household is unable to access essential energy services. And this can be due to a combination of just one of low income. And I saw a lot of it in the words, high energy expensive. And nowadays it's even more higher. And poor energy efficiency in buildings. So this can be an old building, or the materials of the building are not good. So a combination of these three pillars can result in energy poverty. And it was really nice to see that a lot of words were relating to these three pillars. And maybe, yeah, it's not nice to say, but it's good to pay attention to it, that in 2020, 36 million Europeans were not able to keep their homes warm during winter. And then that's like, I think, a really high portion. And now in 2021, we saw the energy prices rises, and they were worsened by the war in Ukraine in February 2022. And combined with the effects of the COVID-19 crisis, it's made some situations of UE citizens even more difficult. So what are the indicators of energy poverty? Let me show you in the next slide. There are some indicators going around, and we base it upon a paper from Christina Eisfeld. And there they say, if a household is paying more than 10% of the disposable income, they are considered to be living in energy poverty, on energy cost, if they're spending it on. But there's also the self-assessment. If you're not able to keep your house adequately warm, you're considered to live in energy poverty. Or problems caused by damp walls or floors, rot windows or floors or leaky roof. And if you are behind on paying your energy bills. These are some indicators that are used to see if you're living in energy poverty. But how is energy poverty combined with gender? In the next slide, we see 4 dimensions. And I want to give a shortly of each dimension an example. And I have to mention, and I have to say, there are more examples to name, but the first one is the psychology, and it's shown that women are more cold sensitive than men due to their other bodies. So they need higher temperatures, and also studies have shown that women are more sensitive to extreme temperatures. So that may result in women suffering from energy poverty and put them at greater risk. If we're looking at the health, we can make a distinction between mental health, physical and social health. And mental health can be more stress, reduce well-being and comfort, and can even lead to depression. And physical health can, if you're living in energy poverty, lead to infections, respiratory and other diseases, headaches, etc. Looking at the economic dimensions, there are like the gender pay gap, the pension pay gap, less time for paid work. And if we take the gender pension gap as an example, elderly women are getting lower pensions on average. So in 2018, women of the age of under the age of 65 are received a pension that was on average 30% lower than men, so they have less money to spend. And then the last one is social and cultural, and there we see that the household roles, no equal voices, and care work. And if we take the example of care work, women are often in charge of care work, and this is often also unpaid care work, so that makes also an imbalance. So here we see really coming the gender dimensions. If we are going to the next slide, because we already heard some mentioning by Louise, and that is, we are talking about the hidden energy poverty, and meaning that people are self-restricting and underheating their own home. So this is based on research done by Christine IJsveld, and she refers to hidden energy poverty, and hidden energy poverty indicates households that may underconsume to keep their energy bill manageable by, for example, cutting down on everyday heating or other self-restricting needs. And because they are doing this, because restricting their energy needs, this may blur the line between being classified as energy poor or not. So that's why it's called hidden energy poverty, because you live in energy poverty conditions, but you're not classified as it, if we are remembering the indicators I just mentioned. So hidden energy poverty refers to the scarcity and deprivation in homes, energy services that is severely experienced by those that are affected, but insufficiently reflected in the established indicators. So if we're going to the next slide, because I want to show, an example. So at the moment we are speaking about hidden energy poverty, that it is something that is not really shown in the indicators. We see two houses here. Both houses are having one is considered a low income, one is considered an average income, and both our houses spend less than 10% on their income on their energy needs. So both houses are not considered to be living in energy poverty. So during the whole year, both households are succeeding in staying out of energy poverty by, for example, applying their self-restricting behaviors. But this buffering capacity may be overextended if the households are subjected to an increased external pressure, such as the rising energy prices, but it may also be rising rental prices or extremely cold winters. And if you're applying self-restricting measures, it not necessarily has to be a bad thing. Some people are doing it because of environmental decisions, but if you're already a low-income household, this can add extra pressure on their already deprived household, and they are forced in such behaviors. So the way households use energy and reduce their energy consumption is a core, but yet under-researched aspect of energy poverty. And households may restrict their consumptions to limit their spending on energy in order to default payment or excessive energy bills. And this adaptation may lead to these households not reach the 10% income line, but they are experiencing as energy poor. So in the last slide of this section, I would like to show you what this can lead to. And there's a list of difficulties which a person can experience, such as social isolation from friends because you don't want to invite them in your cold home, you're rejected from heating cost support, you're feeling ashamed or embarrassed because of your restriction behaviors. It's a fear of stigmatization, you worry and anxiety because of the high spendings you have or you may have. It can also lead to, again, diseases. It can lead to excess winter mortality, and the heat or eat dilemma is also very much the case. So it's already shown that this is a real issue because in the 1970s, there were also high rises in energy seen, and they saw that there was a higher incidences of winter mortality. So this research calls really for not looking at energy poverty only at expenditure-based and income-based indicators, but also complemented with how people behavior is in certain situations. So besides the three traditional indicators of energy poverty, like high energy expenditure, low income, and bad housing conditions, it also is recommended to include self-imposed heating restrictions. So we've seen a lot of what the rising energy bill is doing, but how can we try to mitigate ourselves away from it? And I would like to give the floor to Katarina, and she's going to talk about these mitigation approaches.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simone, for this great overview and also this impact on the different dimensions of gender and energy poverty. And it was also very interesting to listen to you, Louise, so to see what can be done and also different technologies, the combinations, the barriers. And what I would like to present is now what kind of opportunities we have, because we have some tools, we have some concepts that we are experienced in. Sometimes we do not connect them in the first step with energy poverty or to cut, for example, rising energy prices. But this we wanted to show and to share with you. The first idea, what we wanted to share is about collective assemblies. This is a concept which was developed by partners in Spain, and it's implemented in another Horizon project. It's Empower Meet, and I know that many or some of you know the project. It's an overall target to face energy poverty in the Mediterranean. So it means winter and summer energy poverty, and the concept of collective assemblies is the concept of collective learning. So it's so people affected by energy poverty, people struggling with the energy bill, people struggling with reading the energy bill, of, for example, affected by a power cut, or being not familiar with dealing with the utility company, for example. So they come together, it's moderated, and they try to solve together their problem. And the main concept of it is to break with the unidirectionality and the expert logic. It's not only the point that you need an energy consultant, you need an expert from the energy utility company. It's really possible that affected people being experienced, having coped, for example, the problem, they support other people. So it's a safe space, regular meetings, facilitated with affected people. That's the main concept of collective assemblies. Involved groups, of course, it's members of energy poor households, facility managers, representative of social and energy organizations, for example, overall neighbors, and as a representative of social and energy organization, for example, they support and facilitate the meetings in the beginning, and in the course of the time and of the meetings, so there are people that are interested and they take over the role, for example, to support other neighbors. Entry point for gender equality, of course, so it's a safe space for everybody. It's especially a safe space for women. It's also focus to empower women to speak up, so to create this safe space, to have awareness persons, to see that not only one person is speaking, so to care for that, and for example to offer childcare. So there are many entry points, and the impact here is there is no stigmatization, which is super crucial because that is experienced by many energy poor or vulnerable households. It's that interested households, they really come and they share the problems with other people. The people feel safe and acknowledged, and the collective learning is really so the increased learning and to apply tools. So for example, to read the energy bill, to be supported to change the energy tariff. We know that many energy poor households are in high energy tariffs, so they're very, for many people, a very easy measure to face a problem, but here to be supported. So to get concrete support for a concrete request, that's the impact. And the entry point for stable energy prices is, as I mentioned, so tips to switch the tariff for the utility company, to implement measures to save energy. So to say, well, that was very easy. Insulating the windows, or maybe changing the behavior, or maybe just to try to heat 1 degree less. But I think that's very particular because we know that many vulnerable households, they are underheated. That's and of course, for example, communication with the facility management. So something people sometimes do not feel familiar. So it's a quite easy concept. It's really successful, and to install and to implement it, it's very nice. And we can share more information about this concept of collective assemblies. Then we go ahead to our next mitigation measure, which is energy communities. So we have talked about it in another webinar. So energy communities, we see very successful development, of course, in Germany, Denmark, but also in Greece, in Eastern European countries. So the concept of the collective management, production, consumption, self-consumption of renewable energy. So very with broad participation to be able to include many citizens, low level, and so to push a decentralized, democratic and local energy supply. So to really use your local resources, what you have. There are many involved groups because it's really a bottom-up development. So all the citizens can be addressed if they're interested to join an energy community, which, for example, has a certain business concept or business model. A business model can be to produce renewable energy with photovoltaic or with wind. It can be also energy efficiency, energy savings. It can be also heating system. What we see, for example, in Germany, what is very interesting, where we have seen a very successful, organically growing energy community group, is that in the last 2-3 years, it have become more difficult, for example, with photovoltaic because of our feed-in tariff. And now in the last year, for example, we saw a lot of energy communities with a business case of district heating, which is much more complex. But what we have seen, for example, is that due to the rising gas prices, so that the renewable sources, for example, they were really competitive. And nowadays, of course, those are district heating concepts in villages and small cities. They are super competitive and much cheaper than, for example, the traditional heat supply with gas. So that's very interesting. Just regarding the business concepts and the involved groups, it's like also municipalities, so energy communities and municipalities. It's a great combination, of course, energy experts, banks and investors. For energy communities, we have many entry points. What we have shared in former webinars, it's because it's this democratic approach, 1 vote per member. So it's not if you have a lot of money and a lot of shares, you have more votes. That's democratic. It can be also used for gender equality. And it's overall to strive for a just and democratic energy supply. So to include in the statutes targets for the boards, for the membership, to have at least a half of the membership female, or to consider intersectionality. So really to approach everybody with a gender just, with the overall just communication. And for example, also to offer gender trainings, because we know that energy communities, they have a super high potential for gender justice, but we also know that the energy communities, they are still male dominated. So we have the ideas, we have the concept, so we still have the way ahead of us. The impact is, of course, a quick, well, with energy communities, with the bottom-up development, so we could see a higher share of renewable energy production, and also with a good demand side management and overall high contribution to our renewable energy target, without big discussions of the expansion of the grid. So there's really a high potential for a quick energy transition, which is highly needed, and also because of the trust and acceptance, because people are addressed, people are involved, people participate. That's super important for the acceptance. So the high participation, the higher equality, also address low-income households, for example, with low shares, so to be able, for example, to become a member in energy communities with €50, or also with in-kind contributions. So there are very nice tools around, so to push and to strive for a sustainable energy transition. The entry point for stable energy prices is that we know that with local and renewable production, we have seen it in the slide of Louise, that of course we have upfront costs, but in the long run, photovoltaic, for example, is a very cheap way to produce renewable energy. So that needs to be considered. So, and that's for energy communities, and we see energy communities in Greece, for example, in Belgium, in Germany, that energy communities, they provide their members cheaper energy tariffs, also with a cap in times of rising energy prices. So collective consumption, so for example, in a multi-family house, to use photovoltaic, also technologies described by Louise, really managed in a smart way, so to be able to use photovoltaic, a heat pump, maybe to use it for electromobility, which is not a topic at the moment for energy poor households, but so really to have here, to use the spaces we have and to maximize collective consumption with this smart demand side management, and with a secure price policy for energy communities. That is, overall, there are many opportunities for energy communities, but of course we know that we need a legal framework in the countries. So we have in some countries supportive legal framework, for example, and that is what we see on the next slide for energy sharing. And energy sharing is something demanded by the European Commission in the Renewable Energy Directive. It means that energy communities, they have to meet the definition of energy communities. So it needs to be not only commercial, but also to meet commercial, but also meet social and ecological targets. It's a collective production, storage, trading, and consumption of renewable energy. So it might be like a local energy market. So there is a village in Romania, in Greece, in Germany or Belgium, and there is space to produce renewable energy with photovoltaic, with wind energy, for example. It's possible with calculated prices for the installation. So there is also, it's possible to plan the investment. It's possible to plan the costs for the next 20 years, for example. And then the people around this renewable energy power plants, they get a guaranteed energy tariff or an energy price within the energy community. So that's really a nice concept, because it would also untap and unlock the decentralized potential what we have to produce energy with solar and with wind. It would incentivize people to provide their roofs, to provide space for wind energy, for example. It would reduce the fee for the grids, because so it's an optimization between local production and local consumption. And that could be really very beneficial. And in Germany, we did a potential study, for example, on energy sharing, and we could show that overall in Germany, energy communities could contribute to 35% to the renewable energy targets of the German government by 2030, which is more than 80% of the overall electricity demand. So it's really something which should be acknowledged by the policy. So not only LNG terminals, but also decentralized concepts like energy sharing. Involved groups, so we see here the renewable energy communities, they play a key role. So we need much more energy communities. That would be a real push for them. We have the members, so the citizens, providing roofs, providing space for collective production. We, of course, need the grid operators. They are not as excited as some of us about the concept, but I think that's is the way we have to go, and to convince them that it's a great concept and it can contribute. It will not solve the whole problem to get to 100% renewable energy, but it has a big contribution. The municipalities are super interested, and we see a lot of service providers. So in Austria and Italy, Spain, Portugal, we already see energy sharing, and there, for example, there are startup companies to measure the consumption, to measure the production. We see similar entry points like at the energy communities, because of course energy sharing can be implemented and facilitated by new energy communities, but also by existing energy communities. So it's nearly all households could become members of energy sharing energy communities. And also the renewable energy communities, they can also set clear targets. And members of energy communities, we know that they are more interested and they have in energy consumption and energy overall. So the impact is the high contribution for the renewable energy targets, using our potential what we have, because that's a big barrier. Germany and all densely populated countries in Europe, so where we really do not have enough, maybe, so we have really to optimize the spots and the spaces for the production of renewable energy, and we see also a very high acceptance. And there would be, for example, tariffs for renewable energy communities with social components. It would be also what I have mentioned, the renewable energy production guarantees a price stability, and it's a shared production and consumption. So it's also a high ownership feeling. And then in the next slide, I just wanted to show you the concept of energy sharing, what is really the new point, because at the moment, what we see mostly in Germany, for example, if you have photovoltaic on your roof, you just can use it in your building behind the meter, and anything else, for example, to share it with your neighbor, to, if you have a big complex of a school and for a hall for sports and a mensa for lunch and big buildings, and you have different points where the energy comes from the public grid, for example, it's super complicated and nearly not possible. So to share the energy between this district, and that would be the idea of energy sharing, to have a defined district, to have the production of renewable energy production, what is here in orange, and in green, so that would be the additional electricity which would come from the public grid. So that would be really enlarge the local production. That's energy sharing. But let's go ahead with more ideas. What we have as mitigation measures, it's also, well, energy literacy, it's very clear. What I wanted to highlight here as one point is that what we have seen in a study undertaken by W4RES group in some EU countries, it's that members of energy communities, they show higher interest, higher knowledge, higher information about energy overall. And energy literacy is, so we are aware, we have information about the relevance, about the costs, about the sources of energy, the interest. And we know, at least in Germany, I don't have here exact figures, that people are still not yet super interested in energy. Where the energy comes from, now it's more, but it's still not, we have more information about our tariff of our mobile phone, how much gigawatt can I use for, or how much volume do I have to stream or whatever, but for energy. So it's super important, because with more information about energy, we are more able to save energy, we are more able to know the impact of energy efficiency measures. And so here energy communities, they do a good job, and they provide information. People know more about what is 1 kilowatt hour, how many kilowatt hours do I need for my fridge, for example, per week, per month, per year. That's energy literacy. And the next one, the mitigation measure. Okay, that is here the existing subsidies per country. What we see here, and here we see very interesting tools in the different countries, what we wanted to share with you. So we took the data from Bruegel, which is a Brussels-based think tank. And here, for example, we see that some measures like reduced energy tax, also VAT, is nearly, so to face energy poverty, and to face the secure access to enough energy for all citizens, for all households. Those to reduce the taxes is a measure which is nearly implemented by all countries. It's the same like the direct transfer to vulnerable households. That is also, and I think what we wanted to show with the slide is that we know there is a lot of money to support households, to support economy, to support companies, for example. And of course, it's very important to do it in a targeted way. And for example, to support vulnerable groups. So each country has mechanisms via social organizations or whatever. So that's, for example, that is done by many countries. Also with a tax, for example, with a tax, everybody is benefiting, also the richer households, for example. That needs to be decided how to distribute the support to face energy poverty. For example, the retail price, the price what we pay as households, it's also an instrument to face with the situation. And the wholesale price, for example, there's a wholesale electricity price. That's a basic purchase price for the electricity, which is traded at the exchange and over the counter. So we are not able to buy this energy, but I think that is only what we see here in France, for example. That's really a big market instrument. But just an overview, what kind of subsidies are around in the European countries. Then we come, I guess, to the last slide of the mitigation activities. It's, of course, we talk about energy poverty, we talk about gender, we talk about feminization of energy poverty. Sometimes it's it's super important to stress women as agent of change. So we know that women are the energy managers in the households. We know that women on the household level, they face with all the challenges to manage the energy needs, to use the energy appliances, what we have, for example. So that's very important. And for the energy transition overall, it's so important to use a pool of skills and talents. So overall, because for the energy transition, we need it, we have to speed up. So we need everybody, we need all women and all men and all gender to go ahead, and all skills. And so we need a diversity. That's very important. So meaning not only right holders, but really critical partners in the energy value chain, and from the production, distribution, of course, consumption, the decision which appliances will be bought for the households, which kind of energy efficiency measures should be undertaken, for example. That's very important. And of course, what we know also from study when talking about, for example, well-being or comfort at home. So for example, for women, sometimes it's more the temperature. For men, is maybe to have technical devices. I know it's very black-white, but that are some results of studies. So we need all perspectives. So the male, the female perspective. So here we also need an intersectional approach. So to understand what is the need of the customers, what is the need of everybody, and not only of 50% of the population. So to stick to the male perspective, where we know that many technologies, they are not gender neutral, they have a strong male component. And the last one, I can't see on the slide here now, Marie-Lise, the last point was, let me check.
More powerful and swift energy transition. I don't know why you cannot see it. So.
Yeah, okay. So sorry for that. Yeah, it was so, yeah. Yeah. Yep, of course. Yeah, it's yeah, this using all the resources what we have. So we have more engagement, we have more power, we have more skill, we have more acceptance, we have more trust, we have more funding. So with everything what we need, so for a successful and quick energy transition, so that is why we need women as agent of change. So that are some measures what we think we really can use also for heating and cooling concepts for renewable energy. And yeah, that is from my part. And if you have any questions, so I'm happy to answer now or at the end of our session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katarina. Yeah, put your questions in the chat and then we can answer them later on. But I don't know about you, but I'm really enjoying this webinar until now. And because of that, I would really like also to capture it. So maybe it's time as a little break, but to put on your camera and that we can smile. If you don't feel comfortable, leave your camera out, put a thumbs up in the chat or whatever you feel like doing. Take a moment to put on your camera and then we can take a group picture with all of us. And then we can then afterwards move into the last part of this webinar. I see some cameras coming on. Thank you very much for that. So I think we are there. So take a big smile and then we take the picture. Thank you very much. I think it's a beautiful picture. Thank you. Okay. Yes, as I said, we will move into the last part of this webinar. And thank you for all being still with us today. I'm really enjoying it. We have seen, or Katarina talked about some mitigation approaches, strategies, and we would like to make them really concrete with you today. So we propose that we are splitting into two groups. Or first we want to see what you would like to see. So there's a poll in this webinar right now. You can vote which mitigation approach you would like to see more from and discuss in the coming 10 minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Simone. Just if I can add, we will select then the two most voted to work on working groups. So if you could select on which approach you will think that tomorrow you will have the most impact on and could already start to work on, which would it be? And then we will select the two most voted one. Can you see the poll?
I hope everyone can see the poll. I see some thumbs up. I can also.
For the moment, I have no answers.
I see some answers coming in. Almost everyone answered the question.
Okay, then it's me that don't see it.
I don't know if the other people can see. Okay. Well, it seems that that I can see it, but at the moment, the energy communities is one of the highest, and women as agents of change has the most votes. So we can take these two approaches.
Great. So women as agent of change and energy communities.
Indeed.
Cool. I don't see anything crazy.
I
Okay.
can share the results. I see now. Marilise is then now making 2 groups,
Indeed.
and we just take like a small, little under 10 minutes to discuss among ourselves, and then come back and we will do a plenary, discuss what we have discussed, and then it's already the end of this webinar.
Okay, I will open the rooms and you can click to join yours. See you soon. And we have 15 minutes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 10 minutes. Yeah.
I will put pause on the recording and so on. I continue the recording. We had great conversations in our group too. Maybe if someone from our group would like to briefly report what we have said during 1 or 2 minutes. I have to say for my group also that women as agent of change was not exactly an approach as per se, so it was difficult to follow our structure that we had made. But anyway, we had really nice examples and inputs. Is there anyone from the group that would like to report? Okay, then I go. We were saying that the chance we have in this renewable energy sector is that when women want to work in the energy sector, they come into the sustainability. They are more aware about sustainable aspects, and so giving more visibility to renewable and sustainable projects give also more visibility to women-led projects. Sorry, I'm trying to share my screen at the same time. It's always, yeah, Sublin, don't scream at me. I never managed to organize my group work. I'm sorry. Yeah. And yeah, so that is giving more visibility to sustainable project, to give more visibility to women-led projects. That it's also important to some examples from Johannes and from Vipul also, that having awareness raising of benefits of women empowerment, making them know how important they are, what's their plus value, and can really bring them up, and also giving them technical trainings, providing them the complete knowledge they need also to expand and really act and participate fully into their work. Yeah. And important also to collect sex and gender segregated data on the economics of heating. Without this data, it's impossible to know where there is lake and where there is barriers and where there needs to improvement. Yeah, so these ones are really, really important also to bring up at the decision-making level as well, together. Yeah. Yeah, so that's why our input as women as agent of change, if I can give you the floor now to group 1. And thanks for my group. So
that was really great. I think you all can hear me, right? Okay, anybody from group 1 who wants to present, I can share my screen, they can wait it out. If anybody, nobody, okay, I take it. So I'll share my screen quickly and show you what we talked about. Our topic was about energy communities, and we sort of started with how we get started with energy communities. There are already some established energy communities. We have to come our cultural barriers, and we have to find our resources where we can actually start building one or be part of it. Or at least get in touch with the existing one so that we can have more knowledge, expertise, get some participate in awareness program, which is followed in the knowledge and expertise, and using some digital tool always helps. So when we are establishing, we thought of the finances. The finances would be like, we have one good example from Scotland, which has a really good framework just for a startup. And then the other opportunities could be like, if you have a stakeholder in your MC, like municipal corporation, there are more chances that you have a federal funding for the starting up of energy company. And same goes, we have like different grants from the EU Commission, like European Commission, saying about talking like the FIT is one of the examples. They have different business modules that you can always look into. And then from the stakeholders, we have women, as you said, the group 2 has women as agent of change. Of course, women is a big part of our talk all the time, Women4RES. So then the citizens, like all the citizens, being inclusive of all the citizens is one thing, and then the local energy utilities. So all these are, if we bring them all together, organize our resources and have the optimum utilization, of course, we can cap our energy prices and survive the inflation. That's it for the group 2. The floor is open, group 2. Anybody from that who wants to share, if I missed any point, please do that. Thank you.
Lastly, I think I want to give the floor to Miriam, because we would like to ask you if you would like to fill in a survey about this webinar so we can improve our webinars for the next time. So please, Miriam, go ahead. Yeah. I hope.
Thank you very much, Simone. I'm going to share the screen. But I think you should give me the rights to do that.
Yeah, it should be good now.
Great. Okay, so I would kindly ask the participants to go and to go on the slido.com webpage and to either input the W4RES code to go to the poll, or to you know, to use the QR code. Great, I will just leave you a few seconds to do so, and then I will start with the first question. As anticipated, this survey is meant to gather inputs from your side in terms of evaluation of this webinar, in order to better shape the future webinars, as well as the other activities of the project. So as you can see, we have a majority of NGO, citizens and consumer association representatives. Another meaningful share is made of academia and research sector actors, as well as business representatives. Let's go to the nobody else wants to answer the question. I see that we have only 11 answers. It would be useful, and there are 70 participants in the webinar, so I would encourage.
We are 4 from WCF. I don't know if we are allowed to vote against our own webinar.
You're right. Okay, let's go on. Well, how would you rate this webinar in terms of overall content? Did you like the content? You can choose from very unsatisfied to strongly unsatisfied. Satisfied, sorry. Okay, great. I see that we got very, very encouraging results here. Let's go on to the next slide. Let's rate these capacity building seminars. What happened to the question? Never mind. Let's go to the next question. Rate the capacity building seminars in terms of clarity of content. Okay, so these are also very good results, though they show that probably we can aim higher in the next initiatives. Let's go on and let's see whether you appreciated the duration and time management of the webinar. Further on, you will find some open questions, and if you feel like the time management, duration, or content, or any other issue wasn't addressed properly enough, you can also provide direct input and explode, of course, the concept. Okay, let's go on. This is about the responsiveness to your needs. This is very important for us to understand whether the webinar overall satisfied your needs in terms of information, awareness, education regarding the content. The main object of the webinar. Okay, let's go on and see whether you feel more empowered to communicate and support gender balance in the RHC sector within your regional ecosystem after attending this webinar. Okay, at least we don't have any no. These are also encouraging as results. Great. Let's go on. So I swear that I won't take you more time. We are heading toward the end. The presented good practices and case studies is, that were, for instance, discussed during the parallel sessions. Do you feel like they are replicable to your region? Nice. We have only 7 responses. Great. Great. This is really, really nice. Let's go on and let's see if we could do more during our webinars. You can indicate, for instance, topics, priorities that you would like us to focus on in the future. Four people is typing. Okay, we will anyway provide information regarding the next webinars. Maybe Marilis, afterwards you can anticipate the next appointment.
Yeah, indeed, we have one more slide for you, is to share the following webinars coming. Maybe I do it now, so because we are 6 minutes past 11:30, like that we don't finish too late. Is it done with the question, Miriam? Sorry.
This is the last last question.
Great.
And as you can see, we have awareness raising for men. What kind of renewables are more used in Europe and the cost of each one, and which one is more efficient? To provide more case studies, to include implementation examples that are more or less the same. Sex disaggregated data for gender equality in the heating sector. And of course, information regarding the next webinars. I would like to just say, I see that there is another participant writing, also requiring case studies. The last thing, the organizers will share with you another link of evaluation. These would be more in depth with more information about who you are, whether you are female or male, and a few other open questions that would be anyway as well useful for us in order to gather more info on what you may need. Another answer is gender responsive finance, which was also treated during the parallel session, even though quite shortly. Of course, we will do the best to do better in the future. Marilisa, the floor now is back to you. Thank you very much to all the respondents.
Yeah, thanks a lot to have answered to this survey. It's really important for us to have these opinions and honest opinions so we can improve in the best way. I would like to share with you a last slide just briefly to our next webinar. So the next one will be happening on the 22nd of February. It will be organized by ECWT, which is European Center for Women and Technology, and to talk about the added value of women in innovation in the RHS sector and renewable energy. So you can also, I shared with you a link in the chat if you want to be kept updated and send the event informations. That will be an easy way to reach you and to be sure you're not missing any informations. I would like to thank you a lot for this webinars, to stay with us until the end. Thanks a lot to Simone, to Louise, and to Katarina also, and to all the participants of the group sessions. It's always a pleasure. It's been our sixth webinar now. As Simone said at the beginning, we have had last month a round of webinar of 5 webinars that went great with many of you. And now we are starting another round with other 5 webinars. And we hope you like this one and that you will continue to join us. Yes, so if you have any questions, any requirements, any interesting thoughts to share, you can reach us. Yeah. And I wish you a very good day.
Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Congrats.
you. Bye-bye.
Great webinar. See you next time.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.